Welcome to Because You Need to Know. I am Edwin K. Morse, President and founder of Pioneer Knowledge Services. This series is your digital resource of valuable conversations with nonprofit and knowledge management enthusiasts from across industries and from around the globe.
My name is Bruce Boys. I'm currently living in Canberra in the Australian Capital Territory, which is where our seat of government is in Australia. However, since 2012, my home has actually been in China, most recently the city of Wuxi in Jiangsu province, which is in southern China and very close to Shanghai. And then before that, I was in Taiyuan, which is the capital city of Shanxi province in northern China and very close to Beijing. So although people may not be aware of Wuxi or Taiyuan, both are close to Shanghai and Beijing respectively, which are very well-known and major cities. My most fantastic job is working for the past 5.5 years as editor and lead writer of the award-winning RealKM magazine, which has the primary purpose of promoting and supporting evidence-based knowledge management. RealKM was founded in 2015 through the foresight of Stephen Bounds, who's a well-known knowledge manager here in Australia, with the aim of bringing managers and knowledge management practitioners the findings of high-value knowledge management research through concise, practically oriented articles. And we've achieved that objective very well, having now published more than 1,300 such articles, and going great guns in that regard. And as well as currently working in RealKM magazine, I also teach on the University of New South Wales Foundation Studies program in China. University of New South Wales is an Australian university, and my other previous teaching work in China has included establishing and teaching 2 knowledge management subjects at Shanxi University when I was working there. So that was quite an interesting thing to actually undertake. I've worked for over 20 years in the field of natural resource management in Australia primarily, where my main focus was engaging multi-stakeholder knowledge in developing solutions to environmental challenges in the face of social ecological complexity, including what's often referred to as wicked problems. Through that 20 years, I've worked with a diverse range of knowledge and brought that together, often in some very tense circumstances, where there's been some significant conflict between stakeholders, and been able to work through their diverse knowledge about the particular issue and often opposing viewpoints, and actually be able to engage everybody in pathways forward. So that's sort of where my knowledge management work began, was in that. Yeah.
When will knowledge managers become knowledge leaders? What's holding us back and I'm wondering if we should just change knowledge management or knowledge manager label to knowledge leader, because it seems to me that most organizations need more leadership in that realm than they do management.
Yeah, and I think that's right. Knowledge management tends to portray a sort of business as usual type thinking, when really there's very clear indications that we do need to actually emerge from that and become leaders, with so many organizations still visibly not using knowledge effectively in their decision making, and we encounter that in our everyday life, where we engage with commercial providers and so on, and find that knowledge they should have about a particular situation or issue they don't have, or they're not using the appropriate knowledge and so on. So yeah, we do really need to move to a position of leadership, and I think some critical things have to happen there. One is what RealKM's focus is all about, which is evidence-based knowledge management. We really need to be able to demonstrate to organizations that what we're putting forward in far as knowledge management or knowledge leadership initiatives go are based on sound, proven practices. We need to move from opinions about things to actually engaging with the academic research much more effectively. And there's a lot of academic research being done in regard to knowledge management.
Mm-hmm.
And we synthesize that, summarize that, present that through RealKM magazine. So I think we need to do that. But recognizing that academic literature is just one part of the
Right.
evidence base,
Right.
there's also organizational data and information. There's also stakeholder knowledge and understanding, and that's also vitally important. And there's also professional expertise as well, as opposed to opinion. So opinion is where we have an idea that's not based on fact necessarily, whereas professional expertise is those tried and proven practices.
Where does intuition and creativity fit into that?
I think intuition and creativity fits into the professional expertise aspect, and also fits into that stakeholder aspect as well. For example, in my natural resource management work, when I'm working with a community for example, to go into an area, maybe a watershed or a particular local government area, and say to the stakeholders, okay, we have the objective here of improving natural resource management in this geographic area. And it's about having an open participatory process so that on the one hand, we have the academics presenting the scientific knowledge about the important natural resource values of the area, the biodiversity, the mineral wealth, or the water catchment values. So we have those scientific research findings put forward. But on the other hand, we also have a process that draws out the stakeholder views about what should happen, and very importantly, provides a space for people to think outside the square and to come up with solutions that are not an A or a B type situation.
Right.
They're a C
Right.
that's not compromise. C is consensus across those two. Yeah, you have to provide open discussion spaces for that to emerge.
We're talking innovation or innovative thinking. What I'm trying to draw out here is the distinction that probably a lot of folks that are in the knowledge management work are more on the intuition base, trying to figure things out, not science or data driven quite yet. Maybe some, and I'm not saying that's all. I'm sure there's a lot of knowledge management that absolutely is data driven and specific. How do you find compromise? Well, how do I say this? What is the challenge of an organization right now that doesn't have a sophisticated architecture? And I'm trying to bridge that gap between, if you start with a personality that is that leadership type in the knowledge management field, that can start to produce a wave of change through an organization, how does that individual start to inject and build an architecture of data support, data proven, return on investment type of metrics?
Probably what I'd actually refer to at this point is a set of resources that's been put together by the Centre for Evidence-Based Management. It's a global organization, but based in the UK. And over a number of years, it's been extensively researching and also engaging with practitioners, primarily in the management and HR fields to date. And it's produced a set of resources that provides a clear and straightforward structure for how to go about evidence-based knowledge management, well, evidence-based practice generally, but it's easily usable in the knowledge management sphere, as well as more detailed principles and procedures to go through. So they set out what they call their 4 sources and 6 steps of evidence-based practice. So they identify 4 sources of evidence, which is the scientific literature, its organizational data, its stakeholder values and ideas, and practitioners' experience. So they're the 4 sources. Then it has 6 steps for how to go about using those 4 sources in decision making. So it's basically asking, which is the first step, which is to actually word a question that you want answered. How do we improve the use of customer knowledge in our customer interface could be a question. So that's asking. Then you, in step 2, acquire knowledge for that. So acquiring, then you appraise that knowledge from the 4 sources, decide what's useful, what's not useful, what's valid, what's not valid. Then you aggregate and synthesize it together to answer your question. Then you apply it, and then you assess it, and then you readjust as necessary. So beyond that, they have more detailed resources about how to appraise the evidence, because evidence, even scientific evidence, can have flaws in it. So you don't just pick up whatever you come across. You actually have to look at the validity of the processes used, and then make a decision about whether it's of genuine value, and also whether it's relevant to your particular circumstance. So yeah, there are proven practices or proven approaches that knowledge managers can apply to actually move forward in that regard.
What kind of following do you see? And I'm asking this in a really general sense. Where do you see the biggest following of knowledge management industry-wide?
I mean, to look at Australia, most of the knowledge management work is done, I think, primarily within government. There's some in the private sector with some of the major organizations. A lot of those are multinational, though, and they've picked up knowledge management, I think, perhaps in the United States or Europe, and then continued that as part of their global operations. But in Australia, it's to a large part within government. There's, as I say, a little bit in the corporate sector, and there's also some in the community sector as well. And I've been involved in that from a community natural resource management point of view, but there's a long way to go. Resourcing, certainly from the community sector, resourcing is often the biggest challenge, because they're trying to do a lot with limited resources already.
Right.
And someone comes along with this idea and says, well, you should do knowledge management. It'll help you go better. And, they sort of look across the table and look at their clock and go, yeah, right, when? It's like,
right.
Yeah, there's some significant impediments there. But
so where's the biggest opportunity in Australia for knowledge management?
Well, I think the biggest opportunity in Australia is within that community sector, because the community sector has, I think, had its funding base eroded for quite some time. And although it's having to do a lot more with a lot less, I think if we can actually more clearly demonstrate to them and illustrate to them that there is real, genuine value in doing knowledge management, and that it will help them to use those limited resources more effectively, then I think we can have some gains. And one of the things that I was involved in was a Land and Water Australia program that worked with the regional natural resource management organisations across Australia, of which there are 56. And when we illustrated to them the actual benefits and allowed them to experience those benefits, putting them around a table where, for example, we're talking about their experiences accessing knowledge and information, and someone at one end of the table says, well, I've been trying to find out information on this particular issue, and I've been so frustrated and can't find anything. And meanwhile, at the other end of the table, there's this shocked, growing expression on someone's face who suddenly says, well, I did that 2 years ago.
Exactly.
I know. These are small organizations,
not huge.
Not big. So when
that issue, that pain point seems to exist everywhere. And it's like, it's frustrating to see. It really is frustrating to see.
It is.
When that happens.
But interestingly, when that happens, sitting around a table through process, looking at how to improve knowledge management in the organization, that's what does it. Nothing else sells it more than those 2 or 3 minutes where that happens. And right around the table, you could see everyone go, okay.
Oh,
So
right.
We need to create.
If we could package that little experience to be able to see, okay, here's your vaccination of KM. Here,
That's it. Yes, those big aha moments.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
we need to.
You've talked about natural resources and resource
Mm.
management like that. So, my question is, if knowledge is part of an ecosystem of an organization, just as natural resources are part of a geographical representation of the world, can't we approach KM as natural resource management in an organization?
I think we can because it is the use of knowledge is similar to how we would, in an agricultural landscape, we would use our natural resources, our water, our soil to be able to maximize the growth of our crops. But we have to do that in a carefully managed way so that we're not so that we're maximizing the use of those resources while at the same time protecting them and preserving them into the future. And we also, in that situation, have to realize that there's a complex interaction between soil, water, land, and significantly the
Yeah.
people who depend on that, who have
Yeah.
livelihood pursuits, who have desires to see things conserved, and who often have conflicting values in that regard. So yeah, the metaphor for that ecosystem is quite strong, and natural resource management has done a lot of work in Australia and beyond over many years on dealing with those complex situations and how to have effective dialogue and effective, and the only way you can engage those diverse views is through extensive dialogue. So providing the time for that is vital as well. So I think organizations need to realize that it's not just about setting up a database or whatever within the organization. They actually have to engage their people,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to engage those people in dialogue and work through coming up with solutions that those people are going to own and are going to implement into the future. So yeah, that aspect of natural resource management, I think, is there's a lot of lessons in that metaphor that
Yeah.
KM
Yeah.
can use. Yeah.
So maybe instead of knowledge manager, we'll just call it a knowledge farmer. I'm your knowledge farmer,
Yeah,
and
that's
I'm going to help propagate your outfit's best production of their knowledge by making sure we've got the fertilizer, the right irrigation. I'll tend and care and pull the weeds, that sort of thing. And it's kind of fun. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. And I think through that sort of approach, I think, as you said earlier, this when people are confronted with the term knowledge management, it's a very dry and sort of, it's like,
Yeah.
what does
Yeah.
that mean? Whereas, a knowledge farmer is something that a lot of people, I think, would
Yeah. They get a
relate.
visual with that, right? Yeah. Yeah.
They do, yeah.
Bruce, I want you to tell me what knowledge management is. What's your definition?
Well, yeah, I mean, here we step into a minefield. But um, and actually, I tend to try and sort of evade that question, actually, because I think knowledge is a different thing or slightly different thing to everyone because it's contextual. But I mean, knowledge is what we know and how we relate to the information that we're engaging with. It's got a lens that's value driven. It's based on our experiences, our history. So our knowledge is how we interpret the factual and also non-factual information around us according to our own lenses that we all use in viewing the world. So knowledge I think a slightly different thing for everybody because everybody's context and every organization's context is a little bit different. But I think we often get hung up on those slightly different definitions of knowledge, meaning that we have to have different approaches to knowledge management. Well, no, we don't, because it's still the same type of thing. It's still, each individual person's knowledge or each organization's approach to knowledge still has a common set of approaches that can be used in regard to moving forward with that, particularly when we get into engaging with people and having people using their own knowledge in working out what they want to do with their own knowledge. Yeah, so I mean, that's a fairly loose definition of knowledge, but I prefer that. And I've been asked a number of times, I mean, give me a specific definition of knowledge, Bruce. And I say, well, I'm not going to ever do that because I think it doesn't really move us forward. And in working with natural resource management organizations over the years in regard to the use of knowledge, it's interesting that question never gets asked when you're actually dealing with those sort of stakeholders, because when you talk about knowledge, they're already internalizing it from their own perspective on what knowledge is, and it doesn't actually matter. You don't need to define it for them or for the process to work effectively. Yeah. So that's how I would answer that question.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Bruce. It's been very engaging. You've taught me a lot.
Oh, and your podcasts have taught me a vast amount. So, yeah, one of the most valuable resources on the internet to do with knowledge management. So thank you very much for those. Yeah.
Thank you, Bruce. Because You Need to Know is designed to bring people's experience and their knowledge forward to be shared. I'm Edwin K. Morris, and I thank you for joining in to listen to another conversation brought to you as a public service of Pioneer Knowledge Services, a nonprofit tax-exempt organization with a charitable knowledge management purpose. Find us online at pioneer-ks.org and add your voice to the conversation on Facebook.